This is Devin with the Cage Rage podcast, and this is CRP number 83. It is May 1st, 2019. We're going to cover a wide range of topics today on the Cage Rage. And first off, I want to send it over and just greet my colleague over here, Miguel Iterati. How you been, Miguel?
Good. How you doing? A lot of news, and some of it's like news we've been waiting for a long time, huh?
Yeah. I think the biggest news that we need to start out with is just getting right to it. Is we got the big update right now that everybody's talking about that Dana White has come out and told Brett Okamoto of ESPN that Brock Lesnar has retired, and now Stipe Miocic, former UFC heavyweight champion, is going to fill the spot to take on Daniel Cormier, and it's being rumored that the negotiations are in the process. It's almost finalized for UFC 241, August 17th in Anaheim. And there's a lot to cover here. We're going to spend a lot of time talking here. And number one, it's no secret they've already had the in-cage altercation between DC and Brock, and it's been very well documented that this is the fight DC wanted at this stage in his career. He wanted the big money fight, the big spectacle with Brock Lesnar. And we've been, more me. I got to say me. You've been a little bit just, objective about it, but I've been pretty throwing my shade at Stipe because there was some – it looked as if the Brock Lesnar-DC fight was all but said and done at that point. Brock Lesnar just lost the WWE title at WrestleMania, gets beat by Seth Rollins. Seems like he's walking away from the WWE, and it looks like that was paving the way perfectly for an August showdown with Daniel Cormier in the UFC. And Stipe Miocic, we got rumors a few months ago was that there was rumors of him fighting John Jones in July. That seemed to fall through, and then that same day we get it announced that John Jones is fighting Thiago Santos, and that on to headline the July card. So it looked as if Stipe, who hasn't fought since he lost the belt to DC, had turned down a fight with John Jones, almost playing a gamble, holding out that he's only going to fight DC and nobody else. And I looked at that as that could end up biting him, especially when you got Junior Dos Santos and Francis Ngannou on big runs at this division, and they're getting ready to fight in the July card. You've got John Jones, who obviously the third DC fight at heavyweight is a huge fight that the UFC is going to be probably trying to pivot for. DC saying he's going to retire soon. I looked at it like DC is going to fight Brock Lesnar, then he's probably going to fight Jones. If not Jones, he'll probably fight Ngannou or Dos Santos, and that they're going to propel past Stipe, and Stipe is going to be the forgotten man. Well, now it looks like Stipe's gamble has paid off. So at this point, I was wrong. Stipe holding out looks to have really paid off because the probability of him getting a rematch with Daniel Cormier after that knockout was very slim to none, and it looks like he's walked in on it, Miguel.
Yeah, I think, we were guilty of, or the UFC was guilty of, waiting around for Brock Lesnar in some way, shape, or form. And, Lesnar at this point really has become very complicated, and a few of the things that you talked about add to that, First of all, he's now in his 40s, right? So, in terms of performance, and, you want to feel good about performing, and you've had PDE use in your past, could these delays, could he be failing USADA tests since they don't give you the full, news that people have failed nowadays? What is this? Then the other part of it is that's interesting to me is the WWE is obviously scripted, and it's everything that, it is there. And then he's a guy who's been making a fortune there on a part-time schedule, and that really does seem to have come to an end in this last run. I don't know how he comes back, to a part-time schedule. I don't know if he comes back for a few-year run, put in 2-3 solid years in the ring, something he hasn't really done in a long time, He has in the past, so but the way he went out at WrestleMania, that really did kill the beast, so to speak, So we wrestle. We there. I'm thinking Lesnar's do a pay cut in WWE. If he was one of the highest guys paid there, and he hasn't even been on TV and for consistently in years, then he's due a pay cut there. And the way they sent him out there, now to come back to WWE to negotiate after a UFC loss, that's all going wrong for Brock. I don't know if he plans to continue wrestling. I don't know what he plans to do, but the way he went out there was very different. And I imagine the way, the best way for him to come back to WWE would be some kind of like time off and then a surprise return where he's just leveling everybody again. You know what I mean? But he was basically down to like a two-move fighter, and it had gotten to be very boring for the last few years. A lot of the rest of the WWE roster resented him for it. So, that was part of where this part of him no longer having a belt with the WWE is good. I don't know if they're going to bring him back for championship money.
Yeah, and on that, no, you mentioned something very that's worth noting there at the beginning about USADA and about how we don't know, they're not coming right out and telling us if somebody's failed a test. Well, TMZ actually came out with an article today saying that they spoke with a rep from the United States Anti-Doping Agency, which performs all of the testings on the UFC fighters, and confirmed Lesnar has not only been in the testing pool, but submitted 9 samples over the past year, and that he had just been tested once between April 1st and April 18th. And they were checking to see if he's been tested after April 18th. So he's been tested recently, and that would answer a lot of questions and clear a lot of things up with Dana coming out all of a sudden saying, oh, he's retired. If he failed a test, then it's at that point, it's like, all right, dude, you don't want to fight. It's clear you can't be clean even long enough to get into the cage and let us deal, and then fail your test afterwards and then let us deal with the aftermath. You can't even get the spectacle going. So, and that's definitely a possibility. When it comes to Stipe, Daniel, it's clear that with Daniel Cormier that he's not in as much of a rush as what he originally acted like, that he's just on the verge of retiring. He's got one foot out the door already, because he's seems willing to take this fight. I think he's going to fight again after this fight, especially if he wins. If he loses, it could be his last fight, but I think he's going to fight more. I think that he's using the retirement as a bargaining chip. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I at this point, I think the whole Brock Lesnar thing becomes a big shame and a sham. And the kind of thing that is collateral damage for that is things like the years and the months off of all these active and healthy heavyweights that are sitting on the shelf not fighting because we're waiting around for some other guy to make a decision one way or another. So, yeah, I think the whole thing really just puts a whole bad light on the sport. I'm glad Stipe is going to get his shot. I thought, he was getting the talk as the most decorated champion in heavyweight history with the most defenses and things like that. And, that sort of guy, if it's a sport, that sort of should have earned him a rematch, I mean, he went out hard, and he was probably going to go out hard again. But, if anybody had earned a rematch, it was the guy who had defended the belt more than Randy Couture, for God's sake. You know what I mean? So, but at the end of the day, he's a fireman from Ohio or something like that. And, that's not Brock Lesnar, who's, I don't know, some type of superhero type of iconic. I don't know, are people that stupid? It's like, I don't know. So, yeah, I think the whole thing, it just shows it's a shame that the money game always comes to play. The Lesnar thing, the WWE and the US, nobody has power over this guy. This guy manages himself this way, and he's kind of a bit of a loose cannon, and he's always been that way. So, you get what you pay for, which is for the last 6, we could have been done with Miocic Cormier around Christmas, I think.
Yeah, and when it comes to this fight, really the big loser here is Daniel Cormier, because now he's going to get a significantly. The one thing about Brock Lesnar that nobody can deny is that spectacle aspect is there, that he is going to draw in fans. He's going to draw in casuals, and he's going to draw in. I don't think it's near as much as what it was when he originally came in for his first fight in the UFC against Frank Mir by any means. But he still is a significant draw. He's still a household name. He's still somebody that people want to see. And now Daniel Cormier gets a much harder fight with much less publicity, because he's got to go against a legit contender now with Stipe Miocic. So, but I do think that this is kind of a blessing in disguise, because I think that, spectacles are great when they come in, when they come around once in a blue moon, but when they're trying to shove these type of events down our throat way too often, I believe they lose their luster and they just become freak shows. And I don't think that's good for the sport. But moving on to the next big story of the week, it was announced that the UFC this was rumored, the UFC 242 will be September 7th in Abu Dhabi and the UAE. So they're going back to the Middle East, and there's obviously the big rumored headliner of this card that I'm guessing are already in negotiations is going to be a lightweight title unification bout between the undefeated champion Khabib versus the now interim title holder Dustin Poirier. So, and we even had Dustin sending out a tweet to Khabib that just simply said "location sent." So when this news drops, so it looks like that's what that Dustin and Khabib are headed to the UAE in September to headline UFC 242 in Abu Dhabi.
That'll be interesting. It was in the UAE that Frankie Edgar wrested the 155-pound belt from BJ Penn in a fight that I remember watching, and remember most people around me thinking BJ won the decision, and I was sitting there watching with that same feeling of a judge that it went that way. Anyway, a little history there with the UAE. So we'll see if Dustin's got enough to take it away from Khabib. I think it makes sense for Khabib. Khabib doesn't want to fight in Vegas. You're going to want to monetize that guy. That guy is, at this point, even without McGregor, he's one of the biggest names that they've got. And, doing it in Abu Dhabi, I guess, makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing with this, is that they know they're going to have a big show over there. I think that's a market that they want to really groom. That's one of the more modernized areas of the Middle East from what I've read about. And I think that they're wanting to start doing this. I think they even just made a deal to start having shows there for like the next 6 or 7 years, having a show there once a year. So this will be a market, and I think this is a good compromise. I think that it leaves open a headlining spot in New York for the November Madison Square Garden card, which I think we'll probably be looking at something like a John Jones, with him fighting in the summer, coming back around then. But Khabib coming back a little sooner than what we thought, going against the Diamond. And we're going to have so many more weeks and months and stuff to talk about that. So, but I did think that was important to note, that was a big news that dropped. And it does look like Poirier will be getting the shot after all. I was a little skeptical of it at first. There's still a lot up in the air for the rest of this division with namely Ferguson and Conor McGregor. I know there's been a little bit of rumblings about them possibly fighting. I definitely don't think it'll be in the Middle East if those two fight. I think it'll be on a different card somewhere in the States. But I also think that fight's just unlikely to happen. But I think it's important just kind of throwing that out there, that those two fighters are still kind of up in limbo, and we don't know what's going to happen with that. Especially moving on to our next topic, which is going to take up the rest of the show, which is the big story of the week, and that is UFC on ESPN +9 is this weekend in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And we've got a big headliner for this show. This is like I said, this is this Saturday on ESPN +9, UFC on ESPN +9, and it's in Ottawa. and the big headliner is between the number 4 ranked lightweight. So of the same division that we were just talking about with Khabib, Dustin, Tony, McGregor, the number 4 lightweight, raging Al Iaquinta, and the old vet that's on a very good run right now, back down to lightweight, looking good, just knocked off a top prospect in Alexander Hernandez in his last fight, and the winningest fighter in UFC history, Donald Cowboy Cerrone. And this is going to be another fight that when this is over, we just saw Gaethje knock out Barbosa. We just saw Dustin Poirier get an interim title. We still got McGregor and Ferguson hanging around out there. We got the champ Khabib. Such a stacked division, and we're going to have another guy that's going to be clamoring for one of these top spots after this weekend.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Cerrone, once again, back down at 155, and he's been cast in the doorman role here, and on his return. So, and he's stopped a couple of runs already. His winning streak is a couple of guys that were looking to take his spot, and he said, no, no, no. And, is Iaquinta more than that? Is Iaquinta a little bit more of a hot gun than just an up-and-comer like a Yancy Medeiros or one of those fellas? You know what I mean? I got a feeling that Iaquinta already got 5 rounds in under his belt with Nurmagomedov. I think he brings a little bit more to the table, and I'm not sure on this one which way it goes. How do you see it?
Well, yeah, we can go ahead and move on to the wage rage with this while we're on this side. No, it's fine. That's where I was kind of going with it. We've got Iaquinta coming in as a -125 favorite to the +105 Cerrone, which it's only Wednesday, so this could change by the weekend. I think this is basically a toss-up fight. This I think is a little bit better of a fight for Cerrone right now than Conor would have been. I think Conor is a little bit too much of a headhunter with too much power, too much firepower behind his shots, and that has never really seemed to do really good with Donald Cerrone. Donald Cerrone doesn't seem to do good with headhunting boxers. Al Iaquinta is just a much, much, much better fighter than what people give him credit for. He not only, as you mentioned, he went 5 rounds with Khabib on 24-hour notice, and a lot of people think that was Khabib playing with his food, that Khabib didn't really want to get him out of there. But it looked to me like Khabib was going pretty hard, was able to get good position, and Al was just able to kind of slow the pace, stay stealthy, stay composed. And then by that 3rd and 4th round, he was able to just kind of, he was keeping a really good distance, and Khabib wasn't really getting much off on Khabib, but he was keeping Khabib from really just running through him real well. And he's done that against other guys. He did that really well against Kevin Lee. He's got 2 wins against Kevin Lee, who's a powerhouse wrestler. And in that last fight, Kevin Lee was not able to just out-muscle him on the ground. When he did get him on the ground, he stayed composed as he did with Khabib and got up. This is a totally different fight because he's not going against somebody that's a heavy wrestler like Khabib and Kevin Lee. He's going against a very high-quality striker. So I think in this fight we're going to be seeing Al mixing it up a little bit more than we will be with Donald. The one thing that I've seen with Al, that I've seen with Cerrone before that I've not seen with Al, and I think that Matt Serra and Ray Longo and them will have Al prepared for this, is that Cerrone can fade. Cerrone can get pressured and can wilt under that pressure a little bit. We've seen that before. I think that Al has showed that he is one of the more headstrong people in the sport. So I favor Al, and I'm going to call that Al will win a decision here. But I think that this will be a very entertaining fight. I think they're both going to have their moments. And if Cowboy is to pull this off, Cowboy's on one of the best comeback runs late in his career that I think we've seen yet. What do you think on this fight?
Yeah, I do think Iaquinta is going to have just enough at the end. I do think it'll probably go the distance. Although, the way both guys go hard, I wouldn't be surprised if something definitive happened, fast or something like that. Especially if it was Iaquinta knocking Cerrone out. No knock on, Cerrone, no pun intended. But Cerrone, when you've got that many fights and you've got that much mileage and stuff, Iaquinta is a fresher body. And, if you do get hit and the lights go out, that's it. There's nothing that you're going to be able to do about it. And unfortunately, I see kind of Iaquinta. Yeah, you're right. Cerrone's been trajectorying upwards, especially since he dropped back down to 155. But I think Iaquinta is still the guy with the higher top side in this one. And, the guy likely to pull off the decision. We'll see.
Yeah, I agree. And what I will say with this fight is I think that the winner of this is going to have even more reputable name right now at this point, and going to be even on a better streak. And we've seen both of these guys kind of be rumored for Conor McGregor. Al Iaquinta, as soon as the Khabib fight was over with Conor, he was just really trolling Conor on Facebook about how he went 25 minutes and didn't back down, didn't give up, didn't throw in the towel, didn't tap out with Khabib, and that Conor couldn't get out of the fourth round. Yeah, and we've obviously seen Donald Cerrone and Conor. That was rumored pretty much the first 3 or 4 months of the year that was rumored to happen. So I think that's something we can watch out. I think the winner of this fight could potentially walk into a fight with Conor. But we've been saying that about Conor. We haven't seen a fight made, so who knows what happens with that man. But there's only 4 fights I want to cover on the Wage Rage. I actually want to go to another main card fight we'll start out with. It's a bantamweight bout between one of Al Iaquinta's teammates, Merab Dvalishvili, and he's going against a Ultimate Fighter winner, a Irishman named Brad Katona. And these are both very heavy grapplers, solid guys. Dvalishvili's got a few losses inside the cage, but man, he's gritty, and he's one of Sarah and Longo's boys. Katona looks very sharp, like a very good athlete, very cerebral, smart fighter. From what I've seen on the show and what I've seen in his UFC debut and stuff. This is I think this is going to be a very solid fight between two solid potential contenders at this division. I'm going to actually go. I think that this is going to be a good night for Sarah and Longo in their gym, though. I'm going to go with Dvalishvili in this fight. As I went with Iaquinta in the main event, but I wanted to start there because this is Iaquinta's teammate.
I understand that. And what you got there, like you said, it's bantamweight action. Katona's actually 8-0 undefeated heading into the fight. And as you mentioned, 8-4 for Dvalishvili heading in. But the odds have it with Dvalishvili at -160, Katona paying back in the underdog spot at +140. And we'll stick with the favor for this one.
Yeah, I've been going on to a featherweight bout that I wanted to cover that I'm really looking forward to. Is between longtime vet, number 10 ranked right now, featherweight Cub Swanson, going against a guy that I've been very high on, that I thought would actually be ranked, and a very well-known prospect already in this division, in Shane Burgos, if it wasn't for his loss to Calvin Cater a year or two ago. When we look at Cub Swanson, he's been a long time staple of this division, dating back to the WEC days. Really has fought the best of the best, and really the best of the best are really the only guys he's lost to. When you look at his losses dating back to the WEC days, he lost to a really old vet in Jens Pulver, former UFC lightweight champion. He got the infamous 8-second flying knee knockout from Jose Aldo on Jose Aldo's ascent to greatness. When Jose Aldo, the bell literally rang, and Jose Aldo just ran out and flying kneed him and knocked him out. Then he gets a decision loss at WC 50 to Chad Mendez. Then he lost his first UFC fight to Ricardo Lamas. Then he lost a pair of fights to Frankie Edgar and Max Holloway. And then he's right now currently on a 3-fight losing streak to Brian Ortega, Frankie Edgar, and Hanada Moicano. So all those names are solid guys. I mean, he's only lost to the best of the best. He's been in there with a lot of great fighters. He's been consistent, one of Greg Jackson's boys. And Shane Burgos, as I said, young kid, very good boxing. I mean, he's very good at staying in the pocket, mixing up strikes, attacking the body. He's currently 4-1 inside the octagon with a third-round knockout loss to Calvin Kattar in a great fight. So I'm looking forward to this fight. I hate to say it because I've always been a big fan of Cub Swanson, but it appears that his best days are behind him, and I think he's going to be going against a very tough up-and-comer in Burgos, who, as I said, the first couple times I saw him, I'm surprised I would have figured he'd have already been ranked and well-known alongside of Yair Rodriguez and Zabit Magomed and Volkanovski and some of these other guys. I believe he has that kind of potential to be a contender at this division. So I'm going to pick Burgos in this fight.
And right now the odds have Burgos favored at -170. If Swanson's your flavor, he's coming back at +150. I agree with you. I think, Swanson's a guy that if he breaks through and he has the win, I'm going to be very, very happy for him because he's a guy who's left in the ring and put on great performances for us for years and years and years. So and I'm sorry to see him, kind of faded into this situation where he's serving as a doorman for a guy into, at Burgos 10. So Burgos is looking to take his top 10 spot and he's serving as a doorman, I guess, to the ranking. So, I guess he's fallen a little bit. With a win, he can prop himself up maybe for another little win or payday or whatever. But I do think that Burgos, like I've been pointing out, is the guy with more topside in this fight.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if Cub does go out here and lose this fight, I think that this is it's going to be a time that his team and family need to sit him down and really start looking at where he's going to be going because he'll be on a 4-fight losing streak at that point. And I think Burgos, if he wins, which I expect him to, I think that that's going to be a entryway into a lot of future good fights going forward. But going on to the co-main event of the night, with this kind of a co-main event and the other fights that we've covered, as you can see, the big story of this card really this weekend is that they just got such a great headliner with Iaquinta and Cerrone. I mean, that's going to really carry the whole show. But we got a middleweight co-main event between number 9 ranked Derek Brunson coming in at -110 versus number 13 ranked Elias Theodorou ranked at -110. So this is a pick'em fight. I'm very solidly going with Derek Brunson in this fight. Elias Theodorou, good movement. He doesn't stop moving his feet. I do like that about him. He's in great shape. I like that about him. I think that's impressive. But the man can't bust a grape. He has zero power. He's frustrating to watch because he's elusive and moves, but he doesn't in a way that it looks as if he's fencing almost, but in a non-threatening way where it's I'm going to stay on the outside. I'm going to tap you I'm going to touch you with kicks, almost as if we're just touch fighting and win on points that way and just be elusive and move around enough and keep you chasing me and you're not going to be able to hit me. I don't like that style. Derek Brunson's the complete opposite. Derek Brunson has been criticized for being way too aggressive in some fights when he's actually a pretty technical fighter. He's got really good he's got solid hands, solid power, good wrestling. He's been in there with a lot of good guys. He was winning a fight against Yoel Romero that people forget. He was way too reckless against Robert Whitaker, and it cost him. He went 3 solid rounds with Anderson Silva in a fight that a lot of people think he won. Got ran through by Israel Adesanya, but that's Adesanya, who's the cream of the crop of this division right now. I think that Brunson has been long overdue for a win. With the murderer's row he's been called to go in front of with Adesanya and Jacare and Machida and Anderson Silva and Whitaker and all these guys and Romero back in 2014. I think that he'll get it done against Theodorou. Theodorou, that touch game, I just don't think that Brunson will let him play that. I think Brunson's going to be in his face trying to take his head off, and I'm not sure Theodorou. I think Theodorou needs to look about getting a modeling contract and get out of the cage after this fight, personally.
Well, I think he's already got one, right? Isn't that the big deal with this guy? And I mean, I think he's a pretty good fighter. Um, yeah, but he's one of those guys that I wonder if we're going to see that there are levels in this game, right? And so we'll see. Power does play a big factor in MMA, the little gloves, et cetera, et cetera. And if you can't hold a guy like Brunson off of you a little bit, you're going to be on your bike. It's hard to look good with the judges. So, yeah, I think matchups wise, unless he's going to produce something unique or different here, I think Brunson, and I like his athleticism here on the pick'em.
Yeah, I just think that he'll be just a little bit too aggressive, too powerful, too experienced. And Theodoro, I don't think there's anything that Brunson's going to feel threatened with. But with that, it's we covered all the two big news headlines of the week. No really big fights have been announced this week, other than the rumor of Poirier and Khabib for Abu Dhabi and Miocic and Daniel being set up for August. So we got some headliners looking forward to it. Next week we're going to be covering a lot leading up to the next the UFC pay-per-view coming up with Rose and Andrade. But as for now, subscribe, like, share our content. If you like it, we're going to be producing more. We will be covering any future news that happens. We'll be here to report on it, and we'll also be doing a live reaction to what we see coming down the line Saturday night. We got a lot going on Saturday night with Canelo Alvarez fighting on DAZN, and there's a Bellator card, there's a One Championship card, there's a lot going on all the time, and in the world of combat sports, it's hard to even keep up. So,
we still got to do our Pride Part 2.
Yeah, we still got some other stuff we're wanting to work on. It's just finding the time to do it. But I've enjoyed this, Miguel. And do you have any parting words?
No, just like I said, it is a big weekend. It's more boxing oriented with Canelo and DAZN kind of having their Cinco de Mayo. It is a boxing weekend through and through. The UFC in Canada, I think leaving the center stage to boxing, but producing a very good fight here. A lot of MMA on the board, and we'll be covering it here for you on the CRP.
Absolutely. And as you see right here, subscribe, like, share CRP, and we'll talk to you next time.
Tattoo your kids, CRP. All right. Good night, man.